So the beat matching and the notion of like BPMs and arranging songs by BPM hasn't really happened yet. So
I think that started in the 80s.
Really started in the 80s.
Yeah.
Huh?
I think that really started in the late 70s, early 80s.
With the advent of the 12-inch and things like that.
Yeah. Right.
Because people suddenly realized they can beat match
right.
longer.
Right.
Oh, transitions.
Because until the music became what we call DJ friendly, where these songs had an intro and an exit, where you could lay one another over top of each other. What we would do is we'd let one song fade out and let the other fade in over top of it.
Right.
There was no matching. It was just trying to make a little smoother transition. Or we do what we call a quick cut, which is a boom.
Right. But there was no attempt at. But so tempos would vary.
Right.
Within a set.
Right.
It could be a high BPM followed by something with a low BPM.
We try to keep the tempos as best we could.
So there was an instinct to want to keep the tempos in a certain place.
Correct.
Even if you weren't really consciously aware of it.
Yeah.
So Steven's one of the people who starts counting beats per minute.
He was the one who started counting, and he was the one, and I'll never forget this. He had, because he worked for MIT, he created what I call his Bible.
Yes, I want to.
Who I wanted to get my hands on so badly. He created a database of all his music, and had it printed out on a dot matrix paper on what looked like an old accountant's log. And he had them sorted by BPM, artist name, and song title. So he could go to any section of this book was like this thick of the book, and he had one section that was just BPM, another with artist alphabetical order, title alphabetical order, and he carried that. That was like the envy of all of us other DJs.
So he was much more methodical about it.
Right. I wouldn't even doubt if he had album dates and whatever.
Right.
Because I think Steven had access, because of his job at MIT, to computers before any of us even knew what they were.
Yeah. So he's working at, where's he spinning at this time though? Around 74, 75? Darts. Okay. So you're at Cabaret for about a year, and then where do you go after Cabaret? And so is there anything else you want to say about Cabaret? Because few people have talked about it, but there doesn't seem to be too much information about what it was really like there on the weekends. Was it busy? It
was crazy.
It was busy, but it didn't stay the way it was for a long time, though. Why do you think that was?
I don't know. I think the club was big. It was huge.
So it was hard to fill.
It was hard to fill.
Yeah. Right. On other nights, for example.
And playing there, people would go there and they would go into the lounge and watch the Cabaret act.
Yeah.
And then when the Cabaret act was over, they'd all filter out into the dance club.
Yeah.
And the sound was atrocious.
Yeah. Because of the acoustics.
The acoustics of the room was it was an echo chamber in there until you filled it with people.
Right.
Nothing would absorb it. The sound would bounce all over the place,
right,
from wall to wall to wall.
Right.
And that's hit songs from the Cabaret with "Rock the Boat," "When the Fuel Runs Out," "Honeybee."
Yeah. So very mainstream kind of sounding things. So Cabaret closes, and where do you go, or changes, and where do you go after Cabaret? Your next job.
I played at Styx for a bit.
Okay. And Styx was on, I know a few people.
Blagden Street.
And
then it was Chaps.
What
happened? Chaps opened at the same time Styx was open, and Chaps was just a stand-up bar. Mm-hmm. And we used to make, Dana and myself used to make tapes. Yeah. And they used to have a reel-to-reel in the back room, and they used to play our music.
Did they pay you for these tapes?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they would play. So they would just play your tapes there, and then they eventually they knocked out a wall.
They knocked out two walls. And they merged the two clubs together. Styx.
So they were side by side.
They were side by side. Styx originally was like a quasi disco dance club. The dance floor was probably by 8 feet by 8 feet,
Yeah.
and mirrored on 3 sides. And the DJ booth was above the bathroom.
Uh-huh.
That was the first club, I think, that had, no, the other side had queuing.
Had cueing,
Yeah,
meaning
headphones.
headphones and
Yeah.
right. So
Because I used to remix Smarty Pants.
Uh-huh.
The beginning of Smarty Pants on the 45.
Yeah.
It's a 4-measure intro.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to go back and forth from 45 as many times as I could
Right.
before I not get it.
Right.
And I'd have to let the record
Don't
play.
let it play.
But during the middle of the song, there was a break that was matched the beginning, the
Right.
intro.
Right.
So I would mix back into it, and I would do my little thing again.
Right.
I'd like to get it maybe three or four times the most, because
Right.
you had to be so quick.
Yeah.
It's 4 measures, 16 beats.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
how
Nothing.
fast so
Yeah. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean-
back then, if you had a 4-beat intro, you were lucky.
Yeah.
And that's, most of our mixes were like a 4-beat drop mix, 1, 2, 3, 4, over. Switch from one song to the other, or a quick cut.
Yeah. Okay. It's interesting. I just think about the relationship to the music then versus now. We'll get into that later in terms of like how much work you have to do in the booth
Oh,
versus what you have to do in the booth now, which is not, if you don't want to, it's not
Right.
very much. I
Not
mean,
very
some
much.
people, I think that now when people do a lot of mashups and a lot of live edits, they're doing that kind of work in the booth that you were doing, but they're doing it with computers.
Right.
There are some DJs who are actually working rather constantly in the booth to to do these things live, but you don't have to.
no, you could pre-record them.
Right. Well,
Right.
you can do that too. Sure. But so I want to try and keep the timeline sort of in my own head too. So you're at Styx, and then Chaps becomes part of Styx when they knock the wall down.
Right.
It becomes Chaps.
Right.
And what are the sound systems? I mean, are the sound systems getting better at this point?
The sound
somewhere?
systems. What made the real difference is, the other side sound system was mono.
Yes.
There wasn't even stereo.
And Buddies was mono.
Buddies
as well.
was mono as well.
But when did Buddies open?
Buddies open, I don't even know, because I wasn't a Buddies.
Yeah.
fan.
That was a little later in the 70s.
It was
right?
a little later, and it was two distinct crowds.
Mhm.
Chaps was Levi's and flannel.
Mhm.
Buddies was Lacoste shirts,
Like polos and
polos and preppy.
Yeah.
That type of crowd.
Yeah.
Even the music was different.
Yeah.
Buddies played. Philip played a lot more new wave and that type of stuff, like the B-52s and the Pretenders and stuff like that. We didn't play that at Chaps.
Philip, what's Philip's last name?
Oh damn!
Was he like the first DJ
Yep.
there at Buddies?
Paul Egan and Philip. I forget Philip's last name.
That's right. They have a page on Facebook. I might take a peek at it and see. Because Paul Egan's somebody who actually is going to be up in August to talk to us as well. I think he was trying
They were more retro, where the Chaps crowd, as far as music concerned, was more import.
import. Yeah, so I mean, if we're still like in the mid getting into the late 70s.
Yeah.
So 12 inches are starting to come out.
Mhm.
When's the first 12 inch you remember? Everybody has a different opinion about what the actual first 12
As
inch
well
was.
as everyone has a different opinion of what was the first disco record.
Yeah. So what's your recollection of what was
I don't even
your first
remember.
12 really?
I
or
don't
they,
even remember.
They just started to come in.
It was overflow.
Yeah.
It was overflow.
So the sound systems are getting a little better.
The key to, and I attribute this to Lou Feldman,
Yeah.
who worked for Long Studios. When the 1270 decided to put Jimmy upstairs and put a DJ booth in upstairs, they hired Long Studios, or Long Sound, I don't even know the name, and the technician they sent out was Lou Feldman, who was gay. Once Jimmy, myself, and Danine and Lou got together and met, we became friends because Lou hung out with us.
Mhm.
We went out to eat together. We hung out together. We went out dancing together. That was the key in as far as the technical aspect, because Lou knew what we were trying to do. He watched us. And we were always picking his brain, well, how can we do this? How can we do that? And one of my favorite expressions from Lou was, theoretically speaking.
So he was kind of...
He was a very techie guy.
Techie.
When he saw us putting, the rocks glasses filled with batteries, or I use coins in mine, to slow turntables down, it hit him that these guys needed pitch control, or variable speeds. And he designed these little, they look like the face of a small woman's watch. And you turned it, and it had two hands on it, exactly like a clock, which varied the speed on the turntables.
And he built these into existing turntables?
He literally disconnected the variable speeds on the original 1100s installed at Chaps and put these in to give more of a pitch.
Yeah.
So you had more of a range in speed. You could literally go from 33 to 45, 45 to 33 with these.
So is anybody doing this elsewhere in the country as far as you know, or is this
I believe it was going on in New York as well. But
somebody was figuring out a way to change the pitch?
Well,
on
the
turntables?
1100, the Technic 1100s came out.
Right.
And they had pitch control on
Right.
them. They had one for 33 and one for 45. They were separate. They weren't like the 1200s with the bar.
Right.
They had a pitch control for 33 speed and a pitch control for 45. And
Right.
It's a little thing, little nod that.
Right. But the
sticks
turntable
out.
companies basically took that development
Right.
from people like Lou.
Right.
So it didn't exist before.
No.
People like Lou were
No.
changing those turntables physically, and then the next generation of turntables comes out and it has.
I don't understand why Lou even did that, because there was no key locks, there was no key control. So you could speed Barry White up till he sounded like Diana Ross, and you could slow Diana Ross down to the point where she sounded like Barry White. But it was horrible.
But there were some DJs who liked to sort of play with those speeds when they realized they could, right? I mean, some people would play.
DJs who played records play a 45 on 33.
Right, because they actually liked experimenting with the sound.
As a matter of fact, that's how Dana created his At Midnight medleys.
Yeah.
Do you have a copy of those?
I don't know.
I'll have to get them to you.
At midnight. It's like, yeah, I might. This sounds familiar to me.
And the reason it's called At Midnight Medley, he uses the instrumental beginning of the song At Midnight,
Yeah.
which is a 45 12-inch
Yeah.
played on 33.
Okay.
So it's sped down to 100 beats a minute.
Right.
And then he overlays all these other songs at that tempo over this.
Okay. So there's a lot of creativity starting to happen with the advent of the pitch control and the introduction of 12 inches.
Mhm.
So does this open up a whole different sort of like world for all you guys? Like, does it feel like a big shift, or is it just gradual?
It was gradual, really, because none of us thought back then that we were doing anything. We were making history, or we were just doing our thing,
Yeah.
and having fun at it,
Right.
and that's the way we thought about it. I mean, I never thought that we were making history.
Right.
Never crossed our
course.
mind.
So, but there's a real connection with the audience, with the crowd,
Yes.
to the music.
Yes.
So something's happening though that's different in terms of like what it was like when it was a jukebox, or when the DJ was just introducing the songs, and
Right.
so you can feel a shift in the energy though,
Right.
When you're doing this. And how does that make? I mean, what are your recollections of like when that energy starts to change for you guys?
Keeping people dancing.
Keeping
from
people
one
dancing
song to
from
another.
one song to another. Yeah.
That was the fun of it.
Yeah.
That's when it really became fun. How is this going to work? And it was
Yeah.
always a question mark. And probably DJs still have that in their heads when they play live today.
Right.
Am I going to lose the flow with this?
Right. Right.
Are they going to dance through it?
Right. But technology is making it easier to
Oh,
smooth
God.
over those transitions so
Today,
that people don't even know
You've gone from one to the other.
that you've
right?
gone from one to the other. So that's key to
Mhm.
getting people to keep dancing, is to try and trick them into not realizing that there's another
Mhm.
song coming in necessarily. Although you also do want them to know.
Or surprise them.
Right. Right. Okay. So so you're at darts, and then it becomes chess. So what's your sort of work trajectory after darts? Not darts. I mean, I'm sorry,
Styx.
Styx. Yeah.
Well, I've worked a lot of daytime jobs as well.
Right.
I mean, because DJing didn't pay much money.
Right.
Until the 80s.
Uh huh.
We started being paid well and getting some respect back in the 80s, and especially like at Chaps. Chaps was, we were allowed complete artistic freedom.
Mm-hmm.
We were never told what to play, when to play it, or how to play it.
Were there other bars that told you what to play?
Actually, none that I worked in, no.
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 Okay.
No. I don't think I would have been comfortable